welcome everybody. I'm John Sternstein, founder and CEO of Stern Security. We have a booth up there if you want to come by and see all the stuff that we do and talk to the people that do all the real work in the business. You could talk to all of them. Today we're going to talk about cyber risk quantification. I know we have like 20 minutes to go through this topic that you can have an entire college course on. So we're going to, I guess, simplify it. If anyone wants to go deeper on that, happy to talk afterwards. But I guess what I'm going to try to help get the message across today is how you can be effective at working with your own organization to get the message across to them and quantify cyber risk. That sound all right? Okay. All right, cool. All right. I will say some mistakes I've made in my career. You'll hear about some of it here and how I corrected it with doing some more effective quantification on this. So I'd say when you think of cyber risk quantification, a lot of people come up with a lot of different things on what that actually means. So a lot of times people say, well, cyber risk quantification is assigning a score to different types of vulnerabilities. Some will say it's tying it to financial risk and something like that. I think all those are correct, but the way I would look at it is I think that cyber risk quantification is really understanding what is important to the business and translating all the complicated tech stuff that we know about, but the executives couldn't care less about, and translating that to something that they actually find meaningful. And so I will talk about 3 different stories I've had in my career that I've had to use this, and they're all different ways. You'll hear how I failed first and then how we ended up getting this going. So there are a lot of ways to measure cyber risk. Like I said, this is Peter, someone on our team. So I told him I had to throw him in the slide somehow. I guess you can make up your own metrics for cyber risk quantification. You can use something like the FAIR methodology, which is very good, but also might make your head explode too at the same time. And then there's other things if you want to take a very simplified approach that is perfectly fine too. Like you look at reports like the Ponymon report or the Verizon data breach report, and you can understand the cost of different things like a data breach and use it that way. There's also ways that you can get cyber risk quantification by just trying to understand what the cost is to remediate certain issues. And I think that's one thing that people don't think about enough. That's still an effective way to do cyber risk quantification, just saying, hey, we have all these vulnerabilities within our organization. Here's the cost to actually fix all these things, and that's an effective way too. The main point is you're doing it in something that is meaningful to the business. So I'm going to talk about one case. This was my first management job. I was tasked with leading and creating a cyber team at a hospital, and I initially failed miserably on cyber risk quantification. I'll give an example of this. So this is USB blocking. I made all of you sign an NDA before you came in here, right? So yes, baby. So in this hospital, one thing that happened, we had various ways of understanding how devices that are plugged into our network and into different systems. We had, I'd say, a DLP-ish system that we were using, data loss prevention system that we were using. And one day we saw that a strange USB device got plugged into a computer, and there were like 3,000 patient records that were downloaded onto this USB drive. We immediately got an alert about it, and somehow we were able to intercept this before it actually left the organization, which was a miracle. But we were able to stop it, and basically what happened was this vendor came on site. It was a vendor that we did business with. We had business associate agreements signed with this vendor and everything, but they were not supposed to take information on an unencrypted USB drive and take it out of the organization. And so thankfully we were able to stop this person before they took it, and we confiscated it, and we were able to wipe it securely and everything. And so I said, well, let's look at all the USB devices on our network and see how they're being used. And one thing that we discovered was most of it was really not used for any work purposes at all. There's a lot of people putting pictures and resumes even on their devices. There weren't very many legitimate uses. We found some legitimate uses for this, and for those we said, hey, we can get encrypted USB drives that we can track and monitor, and we can do that if we really needed to. But for most part, we could use other electronic means to actually transfer files. So I said, well, as the fearless leader of this security team, we're going to block all USB drives across the organization. So I said, I'm going to be, our team's going to be a hero on this. We're going to say how we prevented this from happening, and now we can block USBs. I got pulled into this meeting with the whole executive team, and I said, well, here's something what we're proposing to do. And they all thought I was crazy. And I said, well, we just blocked this thing from happening. And they said, well, we don't really care. You stopped it from happening. It doesn't really matter to us. So I said, all right, well, that was a close call. I felt like we kind of got lucky, actually, intercepting that. Next time could have been more serious. And I had to rethink about how I actually communicated that to the rest of the organization. They were looking at their own uses of USB drives. They said, well, if you stop that, we're not going to be able to do it. What's that actually doing if you're telling me nothing actually happened? And so I kind of went back to the drawing board on this one. At the time, I was trying to understand what was motivating these executives and realized that in this case, the executives were really motivated by money. That's all they really cared about. Not saying they didn't care about patient records. Of course they cared about that, but cared mostly about money over here. And so I said, okay, the quick and easy way to do this, since I was in the middle of this executive meeting, didn't have time to go through a whole FAIR methodology on what the risk was in here. I said, all right, well, in this case, the Ponymon report says that a patient record is worth about $400. I said there were 3,000 records that were lost, or almost lost over here, and we could have lost, $1.2 million here. And immediately everyone's on the same page as me and thinks USB blocking is the coolest thing in the world. And I said, wow, it's just, a lot of times it's really just the way you talk. You have to understand who you're talking to and understand what's important to them. Because honestly, just telling them blocking USB drives, they couldn't care less. And I probably would have never been invited back to that meeting ever again. So that is one example. I'm going to give another example of manufacturing. So fresh off that whole patient record thing, I thought I was awesome and I really knew how to do cyber risk quantification. I was doing some consulting with this manufacturing company, and we were doing security testing with them. We found a way to break into the organization from the internet, and we found ways that we could steal all their customer information. And we said, all right, well, now I know how much a breach is in the manufacturing. I said, here's how many records you would have lost in this. And in the presentation, I said, well, here's how much you had to lose in this. And anyone guess what the manufacturer said? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I said, did anyone guess what the manufacturer said to me when we presented this? We said, here's how much your customer records are worth, and presented that to them.
So what?
Exactly. So what? Does anyone know why they would say so what to that?
Insurance.
Insurance? That is a good, I have heard that before. Yes, that is a good guess. Anyone else?
Probably because manufacturing doesn't see data as an asset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they didn't think that was an asset. They said that is not very valuable to us. And I said, what is valuable to you? And they said, availability, downtime. That was what was more important to them. They didn't care about that. And then I thought back to my school days and my Security Plus days and thought about wow, what are the core pillars of information security? Anybody know? Absolutely. And I thought back, okay, that hospital case, that was confidentiality we were looking at. I tried to take that same confidentiality and say that will apply to every industry. That's what they care about, but that is completely false. They don't all care about that. Manufacturing, at least the manufacturer that we were doing business with, they couldn't care less about confidentiality. And I said, wow, this is really interesting. We have to change our approach depending on not only what type of leadership we're talking to, what type of employees we're talking to, but also what type of industries. We have to really understand what is important to the industry. And so, in that case, one thing that we ended up doing was we were saying, all right, well, we know how we got into the company. Who cares about how many? They're not necessarily saying who cares about all of this, but it's not really all that meaningful to them. We said, with that type of vulnerability, we started doing a lot of research, and we said, all right, here's how much downtime you could have expected to have in this kind of situation. And as soon as we said there was more than a few hours of downtime, they freaked out. And they said, oh my goodness, you're saying, and before that previous conversation, I said this would cost you tens of millions of dollars, and they said, who cares? But as soon as we said you would have had days of downtime for your organization, that was completely unacceptable for them. And so that's something that hit me pretty hard, and realized you really have to understand the company, understand the culture, understand the industry, also understand who you're talking to actually make that kind of a difference and impact there. So don't make the same mistakes I did on all of this stuff. Any questions about that? All right. This is the part of the presentation. I don't know if it's going to work because there was audio in this. Can you kind of hear the beat a little bit? Oh, you do? Oh, okay. All right. I just figured it's nice walking into a room when you have theme music playing, so that's really my goal. All right. This next one is semi-work. This is how to talk to somebody that is going through, well, you'll see how it is. This third one is a love story, okay? So, I guess question here, we're gonna figure out how to quantify risk in this situation here. I guess question on this. Show of hands. Who's in love here? Oh, we got some hands. Yeah. All right. Well, nothing wrong with that. Oh, there is music. You can hear the music. All right. Cool. Well, I'd say I'm in love. This is my beautiful wife. Yeah, but this is not about me. This is about somebody I do know. This is actually a true story about a colleague of mine named James. This is a coworker. He was in a place that I work a couple cubes down from me, and this is his love story, not my love story, all right? So hopefully you can kind of hear this because I did put audio on this thing. All right, so, you see that?
I met James online, and we immediately hit it off. It's so hard to find cool people out there.
So this is about the same time, make sure we're going on time, around the same time that I met my wife, my colleague James, he met this beautiful woman online, and he came to work and he was telling us how amazing this woman was. And I mean, first we're pretty happy for him over here. So here's how the story went over here.
We would talk every single night, and sometimes during work.
Yes, they talked every day, and every day he'd come back to work and tell us how awesome she was, and telling us how we all have to meet this individual here.
James was so sweet. He He bought me jewelry, a new phone, and a new computer.
Yes, so he started buying her a lot of stuff here. And we told him, like, James, who is this girl and have you met her yet? And he said, yes, I talk to her every single day. And we said, oh boy, okay. We told him that we don't think this is legitimate over here. And he insisted this was true. And so he's kept telling us he's going to meet her, and he's going to prove us all wrong over here.
We lived in the same city. We spoke on the phone and online for a couple of weeks before deciding to meet in person. When we tried to hang out, something always came up. Our first date, I caught a cold and I didn't want him to catch it. Our second date, I got called into work. Our third date, my sister came into town. I was so sad each time we couldn't meet, but James always made me feel better by sending me more gifts.
Yeah, so I think all of you know kind of where this thing's going over here. But either way, every single week he'd come in and tell us that they just barely missed each other. She lived in Raleigh, they were gonna meet up and hang out, and he's gonna show us all this. So we're trying as friends, telling him, just break this off, do not talk to her or anything, because this is obviously a scam. But like I showed you before, the first time running into a situation, I made mistakes quantifying risk over here, and so I did not know how to communicate that risk over here to him. Yeah.
After that, I stopped returning his calls.
Yeah, so basically, all right, I just threw that part in here. But regardless of, it did not work out for him, and he ended up, not only losing a lot of time and emotional damage over here, but also he lost a lot of money here. So, unfortunately, this happened to him twice, 2 different times, and he lost thousands and thousands of dollars in this. And it's hard to show how to quantify that over here, but when we started talking about the amount of money that was involved and everything, then he started to actually get it. And so just trying to talk about how much he lost over time. He lost over $10,000 in these scams over here, which is completely heartbreaking because I really wanted him to find that person. Don't worry, he's happily married now. He found somebody. Yes, thank you. But talking to him about the financials of this whole thing, I guess kind of put that more in perspective for him, and he really understood that once we did. Just telling him just to stop talking to her, that was absolutely not working at all. So whether this is personal or business or whatever, I think this is my argument here. I think that cyber risk quantification is really translating cyber risk into business language. Like I said, you'll probably see definitions saying how it's adding scores to vulnerabilities or tying it to financials. I think those are all correct, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to understand who you're talking to, person, business, executive, doesn't matter what level. You have to understand who it is and what is important to them, and translating the risk into that language. So whether you're using FAIR, or whether you have your own methodology, or maybe you're using the Ponymon report or Verizon data breach report, doesn't matter, as long as you're figuring out a way to bridge that tech talk into something actually more meaningful. I think that's really what is important. And so I got the signal that I have like couple minutes left. So that is my presentation. So thank you. So I guess 1 minute. Any questions? Looks like you have a question. Yeah? Oh, stretching. All right. Anybody else want to stretch? You?
So with the quantification,
Yeah. Oh.
when it's something that's kind of like on your system and you're going to use it, it's easier to quantify because you know what the value is. But if if
Yeah.
you're selling, let's say if you're selling software or
Yeah.
product or something, how do you quantify the risk of those vulnerabilities?
How do you quantify what?
The risk of vulnerabilities in that software.
And can you give me an example?
For instance, let's say that there's an application that's API and it's related to, let's say it's collecting customer data.
You're saying quantifying the risk of a software that you're using?
Yeah, that
Okay.
you're producing and
Oh, you're
selling.
producing and selling. Okay.
Yeah.
But you have there's some risk involved
Yeah,
in
so-
that.
so,
Okay.
like,
I
if
see.
If I'm bringing that USB into my system,
Yeah.
it's easy for me to quantify that.
Yeah.
But how would you recommend quantifying or an approach to quantifying?
Gotcha. Something that's
Control.
your own software,
Yeah.
but may have
But
certain
someone else is going to go and resell it. So someone
and resell it. Yeah. So I mean, for something like that, if you're trying to quantify a risk of a software that you control, but maybe have some issues in it that you want to remediate, I mean, it really depends on the software you're using. But I would think about how people are using it, what type of data is going to be used in there. If somebody is using it, how much information is going through that. I mean, you can definitely assign dollar values to that based off of, I mean, if you look at like the breach reports or something, you could assign dollar values to the amount of data and the type of data going through there. If you want to use like more of like the FAIR methodology or something, you can see just how much of a business impact would be if something did happen with that, whether it's the thing shutting down because of an issue or just data loss because of an issue, or maybe one thing we didn't talk about on the CIA triad is just integrity of the information. If that is changed, how much damage could that do? That's kind of how I'd approach it. I'd be happy to talk about your specific situation too.
Oh, it's not a specific. It's like when I'm consulting with companies and they're selling software.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to put a dollar amount on it because they're actually not using it.
Yeah.
They're just producing and selling it.
Okay, gotcha.
It's the third party that's using it, and it could be used in different ways. So that's where I find it
Gotcha.
harder. I use the Verizon report sometimes in general,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if there was enough of that.
Yeah. I mean, and if it's a lot of different organizations using it, you may have to aggregate a few of them together and just show typically here's how an average customer would use this too.
I have started pulling in lawsuits that have paid out.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is a great way to do it.
Yeah, you just can't find it for everything, but yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Good question.